It's great that you've come to join me today. And today we have got a bonus psalm. And this really is the very last psalm that we're going to be looking at. And then next week we're moving on to something new and exciting. So let's have a final drum roll as we find out what today's psalm is. It's going to be Psalm 37. Now this week we are going a bit backwards. We're going to start with a craft today. And today we're going to be making a giant arrow. So a bit like this, which we're going to be using as we look at the psalm today. And here is how you make it. To make your arrow, you just need to start with a big piece of card. I've got mine from a big cardboard box, so I'm sure you can just find something that you've got around your house. And the bigger the better, because the bigger your card is, the bigger your arrow can be. The first thing I need to do is to draw the shape of my arrow onto my card. So I'm going to make the pointy bit in this corner. I'm going to make it quite a chunky arrow as well. Something like that. Okay, I think I'm happy with my shape now, so I'm just going to get my scissors and cut that out. Wow, that was a bit tricky. If you've got a thick card like me, you might need an adult's help with that. So what we want to do now is just cover all of that arrow in white paper, because I don't really like the brown colour. So just going to, I think, draw around it, and then we can cut that out of the white paper and stick it on. So we'll do this end first, and then we'll go around and draw around the other end. Great, you can see that I've covered both sides with paper now, so it's all white. What I'm going to do now is add some decoration around the edges with my tissue paper. Now if you didn't have tissue paper, you could just use pens for this, or stickers, or whatever you fancy. But I'm going to go for tissue paper. All I'm going to do is tear off some squares of tissue paper, scrunch them up, and then I'm going to dot them along the top, like this. There we go, so I've done all of one side. If you wanted to do the other side, you could. I think I'm just going to leave mine blank, because that took a very long time. And the last thing I'm going to do is attach some string here and here, or here and here, so it can hang up if we want it to. All right, there we go. So my arrow is done. And we're going to do some writing on it later, so if you just leave that bit blank for now. And there we go, so we're going to be using those in our talk today as we look at Psalm 37. Well done, everyone. Now Psalm 37 is written by David, and it's a really great psalm for when life is unfair. Now if you're someone with brothers or sisters, I bet that you've said, "It's not fair," a good few times. So when your sibling gets the front seat in the car and you have to sit in the back, when they get a bigger slice of cake than you, when they get a bigger bedroom than you, when they're allowed to go out somewhere and you're not, when they're allowed to stay up later than you, when they're allowed to watch more TV than you. Well, I grew up with one brother and two sisters, so I've been there, and I've definitely said, "It's not fair," a lot of times. But that's not really the kind of unfair that this psalm is talking about. I wonder if you've ever experienced something that really is unfair. Maybe if a brother or sister did something bad and you got the blame for it. Or if someone in your class got rewarded for doing well on a test, but you know they cheated. Things like that do happen, don't they? And they're not fair. And King David, who wrote today's psalm, also lived in a world where things weren't always fair. He talks in his psalm about people who are wicked, who do wrong things, but they have loads of money, a great lifestyle, and everything they want. And he talks about wicked people who go out and set traps for those who do what is right. These things make us say it's not fair, don't they? And this psalm is going to help us know what to do and what to think when life is not fair. We're going to look at the psalm in 3 sections today, so you can get your arrow out now. And first of all, we are going to point it forwards, just like that. Because first of all, this psalm is going to teach us that when life is unfair, we should look forwards to the future. Let's just read verses 1 and 2. I wonder if someone could read this. These verses remind us that life is short. Take a look at this picture of one of my plants. So that's how it looks today. And just 2 short months ago, it looked like this. Amazing, isn't it? So quickly it's died away over just a couple of months. Well, that's how David wants us to think about life on this earth. That like my plant, it's very quickly over, it's very quickly gone. But take a look at verse 27. If you've got a Bible there, you can have a look at it for yourself. It says, "Turn from evil and do good, then you will live in the land forever." So David tells us that life on this earth is short, but there's a land where we can live in forever. Now for us, the land that David mentions here is the new heavens and the new earth, where God will live with his people forever. The perfect land where there's no more crying or pain or sin or unfairness. So when life is unfair, we should look to the future. And remember that life on earth is short. It's just for a little while. And we have a much better place to look forward to. Right, it's time for us to get our toilet roll out. Now, you've probably seen me do this before, but I thought we could have a go at it together because I think it's a really great way to understand it. On the first square of your toilet roll, I want you to draw a little timeline of your life. So I've just done an example timeline for the average maybe human being. So we've got they're born, they go to school, get a job, get married. When they're much older, they'll retire. And eventually, we all die, don't we? It's going to happen. Now, you guys are right at the beginning, right here. And so the rest of your life probably does feel like a long time, a really long time, because you're right at the beginning. But compared to all of this bit is very short, isn't it? But actually, sometimes we just need to remember that the rest of the toilet roll is there, that this life isn't all that there is, that we've got forever to look forward to in God's special land. So let's just unroll the whole of our toilet roll now. Goodness me, there's a lot here. You can unroll it around your house if you want. Wowee. Okay, so compared to all of this tiny square is just that. It's tiny, isn't it? Sometimes we need to remember that the rest of the toilet roll is there. When life is unfair, we should look ahead to the future and remember the perfect forever land that God has prepared for us. Let's get our arrows back out now, and this time we're going to point them up. Because when we're struggling in an unfair world, Psalm 37 tells us that we need to look up to the Lord. Now I want you to imagine for a minute that Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, is resigning, and you yourself get to choose the next Prime Minister, the next person to be in charge of our country. What kind of person would you want? See if you can write down or maybe talk about 3 different things that you would want from this person, that you'd want them to be like. Okay, so the 3 things I thought I'd quite like the Prime Minister to be is compassionate and kind, wise, and someone who will do the right thing. Now, Psalm 37 reminds us that it's God who's in charge of our world. And the psalm is jam-packed, full of little encouragements for us as we look up to God and remember what he's like. Let's look at a few examples. Verse 4 says, "Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." When we're looking to the Lord, to God, for all that we need, he gladly gives us his friendship and his love. Remember from our memory verse, his love is better than life. The one in charge of the world, God, is so generous. He gives us himself. He gives us his love. And that's such a great gift. And it's so great that someone so generous is in charge of the world. Then let's look at verses 23 and 24. They say, "The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him in his hand." I think David here wants us to have a picture in our heads of a little toddler walking along holding their parent's hand, maybe like in this picture. When we are friends with God, he helps us to walk the right way. We might trip, but we can be sure, like the toddler, that we won't fall. He has got us. He's got our hand. Because the one in charge of the world looks after his people. And finally, let's look at verse 28. 28 says, "He will not leave those who worship him." So the Lord, the one in charge of the world, is trustworthy and he's faithful. That means he will not leave us. No matter what we do, he will not leave us alone. So when life is unfair, let's look up and remember that God is the one in charge. And remember that he is generous. And remember that he looks after his people. And remember that he is trustworthy and faithful. Okay, I've got a little activity for you to do now. So I'm going to put up on the screen a little path puzzle. And I want you to find the right path that leads the mouse to its cheese. Give it a go. Right, let's get our arrows ready again. But this time we are going to point down at our feet. Because when life is unfair, we need to look at our feet and make sure that they are on the right path. Now, in this psalm, we hear about 2 different paths. The path the wicked are on and the path the righteous are on. Now, the path of the righteous is for people who are made friends with God because of their faith in him. They look to him, they listen to his word, they live for him. He knows them and they know him, and they will be saved by him. Not because they're good and try hard. No, verse 39, reminds us that it's God who saves his people, and it's God who makes his people righteous. Verse 39 says, the salvation of the righteous, that's like the rescue, comes from the Lord. And we've already seen that the path of the righteous is leading to life forever with God. Now, the path of the wicked might look quite appealing in some ways, but it's a path of living without God. And we see in verse 8 that the path of the wicked leads to destruction. Verse 38 says, all sinners will be destroyed. There will be no future for the wicked. So when life seems unfair, let's look at our own feet and make sure that we are on the right path, heading in the right direction. Let's make sure that we are on the path of the righteous that is leading to life. Okay, I've loved looking at Psalm 37. I hope you've enjoyed it too. What I thought we could do finally with our arrow is just write a little bit of what we've learned from Psalm 37 on the arrow. So what we're going to write, I'll put it up on the screen, is when life seems unfair, look ahead to the future, look up to the Lord, and look at your feet and make sure they're on the right path. So I'll put that on the screen now, and maybe you could write it in the middle of your arrow. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Why don't you take your arrow and hang it somewhere where you'll see it and be reminded of this really brilliant psalm. Now, Hannah will be back with you next week, and she'll be introducing you to a book of the Bible called Ephesians. Maybe that's a book you've never looked at before, and if so, that's really exciting, isn't it? To be looking at a new book of the Bible. And I will be back in 2 weeks, so have a great couple of weeks, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!